All right. Looks like we're live. Who all is here? Well, Auto Salvage Outlaws has been here, and Buff, Robert Magny, MM78, A Cove. They were all here really early. Somebody got a YouTube browser. It's me. Kill that. It's me. I try not to do that. Big Block 402's here. JB, Irish Outlaw, First Responder, Scarlet, the Four-Eyed Cuda. Let's see. Tall Garage is here. Glad to see you in here, Ken. Best Customs. Ron English of the English Brothers Trio. Slant Daily, being Professor P. Pure Pontiac Garage. Glad you could make it. Dude Mopar, all the way down from Florida. The One-Eyed Cat is here. Tony's Hot Rod Garage is here. Calling Tebow, NSB. 244 days. That's it. The clock and calendar wait for no one. Greg Hamilton, Smoke Wrench, Mr. Polo C4, Dan E. Boyd. Well, how are all you guys? Thanks for joining us today. We are very privileged to have the Nelsons here. And you guys missed it. You missed an incredible pit thrash. But we got it. We finally got audio and video and no echo and no overlap and all that stuff. Yep. It was fun. Yeah. But I thought they got a new build going and try to get some of the tech-heavy guests on early in the year since you guys are all building new stuff. I thought it'd be fun to have these guys on, and they're always great to hang out with. So, Twisted Mopar Garage, welcome. All right, got a good crowd in here. Mostly old parts and Russ Patrick. Glad you all are here. So, Nelsons, it's rare to see you guys sitting down. You're always just so busy working in that shop. Every time I ever click on one of your lives, you're always thrashing, getting stuff done. And it's been on that car lately. Where does it stand? Where does your build stand right now?
Well, we are 21 days from the event.
Yeah, we will have left 21 days from now. We will be hopefully in North Carolina at this point. So we are frantically trying to get this thing put together. It's we're down to plumbing and wiring, fired up, dyno session, do a little road test, and get the trailers ready, load them up, and head south.
Excellent. So that thing is, do you know about where your final weight's going to work out?
We actually weighed the other day. Now that we're a little closer to having it done, we weighed again. We actually weighed on the last live stream, and I was a little discouraged, but we weighed again, and it's right now, as it sits, it's 2,430 pounds with driver. But we got to add about 150 pounds yet, so it'll be hopefully under 2,600 with driver.
What's the wheelbase on that?
It's 112, I think. 100 and a half inches. Factory's 102 and a half.
Right. Yeah. I was thinking of something else. Yeah. So it's fairly short. Yeah.
I was going to say 112. That's pretty long. That's longer than an A-body Mopar.
Yep.
Yeah, 112 is.
Yeah, I was thinking of a Camaro. I don't know. I was thinking of a Datsun actually, because it's the same length.
Yeah, that Datsun, it's got a limo wheelbase on it, doesn't it? That Datsun's got a long wheelbase.
No, it's only 106 inches.
Okay.
Really?
That car is so small. The factory wheelbase is 90 inches, and we added 16 inches to the car, so it is the same wheelbase as a Camaro. 106.
Wow. Pure Pontiac Garage is saying he's got to buy a Mopar shirt so he doesn't feel out of place. Well, you know what? I don't think anybody would say the Nelsons are Mopar people, and they're on here by choice.
I mean, we like all cars, and we're actually the new Dodge 3-liter Hurricane motor, the new inline six. We're like all over that thing.
Huh. That would be interesting.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
you guys, you're known for that 4200 inline Chevrolet, but what's got your interest up with that Dodge engine?
They're making 500 horsepower with the thing from the factory.
But there's a built version that's available that's 1,000 horsepower. And it's a 3-liter. And with the interest in land speed racing, that would give you an opportunity to really go after some, high value records.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have seen the dyno testing. They have this really cool dyno cell where they can rig the engine up and they put it on under all sorts of G loads and move it all around. And this thing's just, going through the RPM range, and they're just moving it all over the place. And they're torture testing this thing. And I think it's going to be a motor it's going to be the new 2JZ, in my opinion.
What got you guys going down the path of the inline six anyway? Because I know I saw on your build, you have photo albums. If you guys look at their website, they have photo albums up of their builds. And you originally had a V8 in that Datsun, I believe.
Yep. Yeah, we actually had there was originally a 360 in it. And then we put a turbo 5.3 LS into it, then another 5.3, then a 6-liter LS. And then we put the 360 back into it, and then we put the inline six in it.
Yeah, and what was the thing with sixes? Where did all that come from?
My first hot rod was a 250 inline six powered Chevy Nova, and we bought it from my uncle, and he was a bad influence on me, so. Ever since I got that car, I fell in love with inline sixes. I just loved the way that they sounded and how smooth they were. And while I was messing with that thing, everybody's like, "You need to mess with these 4200s. They're the new thing." And at the time, that was when I was 16. So these 4200s were really, really new, so they were still really expensive. And it took a couple years for me to get through college and all that to finally circle back around and, okay, let's play with these things now that they're cheap.
But little did he know that his father played with 6-cylinders quite a bit 30, 40 years ago.
Ha!
Yeah, I had a 235 and a 54 Chevy, and learned all the things that you need to do to make them run better. Not that you're going to make them run great, but ultimately I learned a lot about 6-cylinders there, and then transitioned into the later 6-cylinders with the 250s and 230s. I've had probably a dozen of those over the years, but the V8s were the obvious choice for higher horsepower, and but I always loved the 6-cylinders. So when he showed interest in it, I didn't distract him from pursuing what he wanted. Check this out.
So, people are used to seeing howdy, boss.
Chocolate. Wish we could share, guys.
People are really used to seeing you guys do some pretty cool high-level stuff. I mean, you guys, I'll say that because your work has a really good reputation. What kind of stuff have you done that's really different, maybe that you did before YouTube? Because I know that a lot of us are judged by just what we've done since we've been on YouTube, and people don't realize virtually all of us were hot rodding and building stuff and doing things long before. So do you have any stuff people might be really surprised to hear that you built or did or tried before YouTube?
Yeah, I mean, we've always been doing lots of wacky and wild stuff. We, from when I was very young, we went to this event called the Grassroots Motorsports Challenge. And at that event, you're only allowed to spend it used to be the year, whatever year it was, put a dollar sign behind it, and that was how much you were able to spend. So if it was 2005, you were allowed to spend $2,005 on the car. So as you can imagine with that, you got to get pretty creative if you want to build a car at all for that cheap. So, you know, I grew up around, Dad made a custom set of 180-degree headers for, the Datsun actually had 180-degree headers on it when it had the 360 in it. And, you know, I grew up around all kinds of wacky and wild suspension setups, and, you know, trying out 3-links because you can make them work in the drags, but you can also make it, you know, roll and work in the autocross, and you know, torque arms and all sorts of stuff. So, you know, Dad, I think more had fun messing around with different types of suspension than, you know, more of the engine stuff that we're doing these days. But I'm sure you have more to add.
Yeah, I was always the type that wanted to try everything, and I still do. You know, I still want to do hill climb. I want to get back to land speed racing. You know, drag racing was easy to get started in central Pennsylvania. Obviously, we are absolutely, you know, blessed with how many tracks are within 100 miles of here. There's at least a dozen tracks we can get to within 2 hours of towing. So it was very easy to get involved in the drag racing. But having grown up with Hot Rod magazine every year, it's funny, Hot Rod's about to celebrate 75 years, and I've had a subscription to Hot Rod for over 40 years. And I just found it interesting that I saw the advertisement today, you know, they're 75 years, and it made me reflect upon the fact that I've had a subscription to that magazine since I was since the 70s. 77, I think, is when I got my first subscription. And my favorite issue every year was the Speed Week at Bonneville. And I have a collection of the hot rods, and almost every issue, when I'm tired with it, it goes. But all of the Speed Week issues I have, and I have a bunch of them from back in the 60s. So it's, you know, when the opportunity arose to get into the land speed stuff, we did that. And then, as Calvin mentioned, the Grassroots Motorsports Challenge came along. We won the drag race portion of that 14 times in a row, and actually finished first and second every year that we participated with 2 cars. It was a lot of fun to do that, and everything that we did was always low buck. You know, even as a kid, trying to figure out how to make cars perform with minimal investment of time was always a primary focus. I spent 90% of my time from the flywheel back. And that's not to say that I didn't put a fair effort into the engine. You know, it was neat in the early years, and HP book and the SA books and the books that David Vizar was part of. They were the go-to books as I was a kid. I've still got a number of magazines that Mr. Vizard had penned, and I really appreciate those. Every time I see one of his videos, I just smile, knowing that I got some of his written word that I cherished when I was younger. But you know, as I get older, the desire to go after some of the other events is growing stronger, and I look forward to that happening. I've enjoyed trying to master, trying to make suspensions work, specifically the front end, while we were going through the years of the autocross and the challenge, and then the drag racing. Learned that very early on, and we've done a lot of neat things, because we've not paralyzed ourselves by being brand loyal or a specific racing interest, just staying with that. We've dabbled in a number of things. I've been involved with dirt track racing. I've had a lot of help provided to a friend of mine who's won track championships. And it was funny. I had an engine I threw together of just junk parts. We called it so we don't have to push it engine. And he needed an engine real fast. We threw it in his car, and before the end of the season, he had locked up the points championship. So just a vast interest in every kind of motorsport.
Dad's been into turbos since what, the 70s?
No, definitely in the 80s. And when they were developing the Buick program, I was fortunate enough to be part of a team where I got to see some of the very early development of the V6 program. And Doug Rowe, who was involved with the turbocharging and the development of the Grand National program, I actually own the final parts collection that he had that was sold off from the estate. And I just happened to move that box today, and it was interesting to think about, that was 84 when all that program was going on, and I have the last few parts from one of the original developers of the program.
Huh. I'm looking over here in the comments. I noticed Barrow's Garage, he lives in Idaho. He says he's only a few hours from the Salt Flats and recommends people going to Speed Week at least once in your life. Slant Daily, Professor P says, take a rental car to Speed Week so you don't ruin your own car. What's been your experience with going out there in the salt? Because I've never been there. I've never even seen them.
I've never been there. The goal is to get there, but I want to go over 200 on the East Coast first, because if I can't get there on a paved surface, I'm certainly not going to stand a chance on salt. But
the coefficient of friction of salt versus asphalt, I think it's like a fifth, 20% of the amount of power you can put down on salt is like 20% of what you can put down on asphalt. So,
wow,
that's the car totally different.
Barrows is saying take full advantage of the car wash, or you won't last long enough to get home. I'd imagine salt is not good.
I've always heard that there's actually a rental agreement that if you take a car out to the Bonneville Salt Flats, they will charge you some crazy rate for it. It's they're very aware of that week and what people have done in the past and renting cars and taking it there. So they have put themselves in a position where they protect themselves.
So in other words, rent far enough away and wash it really good. That's what that kind of translated to.
Well, when we get ready to go, everybody's going to know it, because we actually had a long conversation last night about starting to get geared up again to go land speed racing here. We've got 2 projects that we're working on. We've got an engine going together. We have a serial number 1 design of a transmission that's going to go into one of the cars. And, we're hoping first time out, it'll be well over 200. And if everything works out, we're going to try and get 2 cars up there to run over 200. Our goal is over 208.9, whatever's written behind me on the whiteboard. So 974, we want to exceed 208, 9.974 miles an hour. And so that's in the works. That'll be YouTube content that we work with later this year. But after we have mastered everything that we need to on this end of the world, then we'll drag it across the country, because everybody involved in that event from this end of the world says it'll be between $10,000 and $15,000. So we got to have our ducks in a row before we're willing to make that kind of an investment. The entry fees are very high. The cost of fuel obviously is an issue. The cost to be there is an issue. The duration that you're there, those kind of costs will definitely compound themselves very quickly to a very expensive adventure, and that's not going to deter us. It just we don't want to go out there and look like a bunch of rookies.
Nuke an engine on the first pass.
You had mentioned hill climbing, which is interesting. So what kind of hill climbing? That's what would you like to do if you wanted to get into hill climbing? What would your plan be? I find that interesting. I don't think I've ever had a guest say I want to try hill climbing before.
Well, I love road racing, and I love being able to aggressively go after winding roads. And we happen to have a very, very strong hill climb group in this part of the country. Obviously, Pennsylvania, with all the hills that it has, there's probably 20 different clubs in the area. And one of the strongest ones actually has an event just north of us in the Hershey area. So I want to participate in that, but I've always wanted to get out to Pikes Peak, even if it's not, you obviously have to qualify, but I would love to at least climb that mountain as a check mark item, a bucket list item in my life.
Certainly. So you guys have done a lot of things that obviously have worked out well. What was probably one, like say, one engine experiment, one car experiment, one make or something that just you got halfway into it and said, this is an irreparable disaster of an idea? You ever have anything like that where you tried a new engine combo or something and just...
Yep. The LS4.
Oh, the LS4.
So the LS4 is the front-wheel drive LS, and we went after that pretty hard, trying to set the record for the quickest front-wheel drive powered LS in the world.
And we did.
We did.
And we did. We have the record for the fastest and the quickest.
Yep. It was very painful to get there.
It was. Oh my gosh, we broke more parts than had more wild rides than you could count.
I know that car. I know every wrench size you need to use on that car still to this day, and I want to know it. Like, I want that knowledge to just go. Like, I took that thing apart and put it back together so many times.
What car was that in?
We have a 92 Eagle Talon. It's bright green. It's almost like the Dodge green. I forget what the color is. The bright green that they put on a lot of Dodges.
Yeah, lime gold green.
Yeah.
They called it sassy. What was that? Sassy grass. The original Mopar color from the '70s. I think it was sassy grass, and it just matched because obviously it's a Mopar, and it was funny because I surprised Calvin was starting to paint the car. I just saw it on the shelf, and I thought, that's cool. And I started painting the thing, and you should have seen his face implode when he first saw it the first time. It was hysterical. But yeah, that LS4, we had to develop everything on that thing, from how to put water through it, the transmission. We were to the point where we had so many challenges. We had to launch in second gear. The seals that you're required to have to run nines. We had to make all of those kinds of things. You want
to talk about fourth steer? It's try driving something that makes 800 horsepower, but it's going to the front wheels.
With what transmission?
So GM, brilliant. They built this thing called the North Star. And
right. Okay.
they're, you know, the reputation of them. They blow head
Right.
gaskets all the time at 100,000 miles. And every single North Star ever made came with this transmission called the 4T80E. So it's the T in 4T80E means transverse. If you're familiar with 4L80E, it's a
Right.
longitudinal. So it's basically a transverse 4L80E. You know, tough as nails, but they only put it behind the North Star. And you know,
And
so
never had a posse.
Yeah, and never had a posse. But you know, they had this junk engine with this you know, super beefy transmission. And then they developed the LS4. So the LS4 is based on the LS architecture. So you know the reputation of them, but they only put behind the LS4 the 4T65E, which is basically a transverse 4L60E. So you know the reputation of them. I don't have to tell you. You've seen the memes. So they just had to take the two good parts, put them together, and they'd have something. So yeah, it's
The problem with that sounds easier said than done. The LS4 doesn't have provisions for a starter motor, and the 4T80E doesn't have provisions for a starter motor.
yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
the first thing we had to do was we built an oil pan with starter provisions that you could turn a small block Chevy starter sideways and bolt it underneath. Well, in order to do that, you compromise some of the oil sump volume. So we had to build that out, which meant that we had to build a custom subframe. And we got a certain year's axle so that we could draw everything in closer, tighter to the center of the car. And, you know, that's the beginning of the snowball. The energy that it took, little special brackets and tabs and even this, what's that?
Travel limiter.
Oh yeah, travel limiters and you know, because if you stretch the suspension out too much, you can break axles. And so we had to work through all that. So we had Camaro struts with Cadillac knuckles and a Cadillac, yeah,
Cadillac subframe, and then we used
Eagle Talon steering.
Eagle Talon steering rack, and we used the BMW strut tops because they were the cheapest strut tops I could find on eBay. Trying to think what else. It's an Impala engine out of a Chevy Impala. A four-corner turbo.
Galant hubs.
Oh yeah, and then we used for the back. We used Mitsubishi Galant rear hubs because they're 5 on 4.5 bolt pattern, and they're super duper light. And we made a custom chrome ollie rear straight axle. I mean, we want to talk about custom,
and
we're gonna throw all that junk in the scrapper as soon as we're ready to move on to the next thing with that car.
Yeah, the car's an amazing car. 750 cert cage, the whole 9 yards. But short of having a gun held to our heads, I think we're beyond any front wheel drive insanity like that again. So
yeah, we get questions a lot of like, when are you guys gonna do an all-wheel drive car? And I'm like, that's still front-wheel drive. No. All-wheel drive.
What kind of
front-wheel drive.
What kind of ET? What kind of performance did you get from it?
The best we ever could get out of it was a 980 at 150 miles an hour.
151. Yeah.
151. Yeah. And it was fun. When that car worked, it was awesome. Like that thing picked up 33 miles per hour in the back half.
Yeah.
I mean, it moved, but getting through the shifts was the hardest part.
The sad part of that car is we finally were to the point where we were ready to start putting power into it. We were making steady 150 plus mile an hour passes, and we had one of those famous Fram oil filter failures, and it destroyed the engine.
Oh.
Yep.
But you were ready to go quicker.
Yeah, we the record that had been outstanding, I think, was 10:38 at no, sorry. It was 10 something at 138 miles an hour. And we broke the mile an hour record by 13 miles an hour. And I know we beat the ET record by half a second. And to this day, no one has even come close to going after that record. And had we not had that happen, we were to the point where we were going to be able to start going after 160 and had our eye on trying to get it to go 170. We had finally taken enough power out of the car to make it work to the point where we could put the power in on the top end of the track.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a 4-speed transmission, but we were using only 2 of them, and it was effectively a front-wheel drive power glide.
Right.
The second gear ratio on the 4T80Es is 1.68, and if you're familiar with power glides, they're 1.65.
1.7.
Oh.
6.
176.
Yeah. So it's basically a front-wheel drive power glide.
Nice.
So yeah,
Nice.
that was never again.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm not familiar with tuning with the front wheel drives. I know a lot of these Honda guys are. What was the biggest challenge to getting that chassis to work right with being front wheel drive? That's just like a whole foreign thing completely to me.
So the way you set up your car, you basically have to set up so that the axis that the wheels turn on intersects with the center of your tire, and that will eliminate any torque steer.
Okay.
The problem is if you don't have a limited slip differential, which we didn't, if you get any kind of upset in the car, break the tires loose or anything like that, you'll have a different kind of torque steer where one tire is going to lose all torque and it's going to put all torque to the outside wheel and it's going to want to turn it like that. So when you're putting 700 horsepower through, a transmission and you lose all power to the one wheel and then the other one, it just wants to tear the steering wheel out of your hand. So, that's a big part of tuning for front wheel drive. And then, from there it's very heavy spring rates in the back. A lot of guys put wheelie bars actually on the back. We didn't, but who knows where that might have gone. Trying to get as much weight on the front of that car as possible. We were
73.
Yeah, 73% nose heavy with that car.
Wow.
You don't want to go too wild because in the shutdown, if you're trying to slow the thing down, the back wheels will come off the ground and you're, going to have a fun time. Getting the parachute mounted in the right location that it keeps the wheels on the ground. It's, lots of little things.
That's really cool, though, that you just tried it and tried the experiment. I think that's neat.
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to try it, and Dad's always wanted to try it, and in some ways, I'm glad we did it just so we could get it out of our system.
Yeah.
But it was painful.
I'm super glad we did it because what's not boiling to the surface, but to see Calvin work through some of the challenges that we had, he ended up developing a network with some very technically savvy folks who he learned a lot about traction control and power shifting during shifting, managing power, and some of the folks that he met are actually friends that we have today that we're able to reach out to. And
if you ever chirp second gear, you can't do that in a front wheel drive. That you're breaking the tires loose. So there was all sorts of learning with that. Cutting the power when it's pulling the RPM down. With the engine management system and just all sorts of strategies like that. Yeah.
Turns out that one of the faster Hondas in the country is owned by a person who's now a friend of ours that lives just down the road. He has business just down the road from us, and he's running high 180 mile an hour passes on a regular basis, and getting to know him, and trying to, the difference between what we have and what most of these front wheel drive guys have is they just have power, they don't have torque. And the problem with our setup is we had a ton of torque and a ton of power. And when we would try and shift gears, it would just, if it knocked a tire loose, it was trying to find the center line or the wall, and you didn't know which one it was going to be. You just had to be ready to manhandle the thing back to the center of the groove. And that's
Keep your thumbs out of the steering wheel.
yeah, do not keep your thumbs in the steering wheel, because it would literally try and rip the wheel out of your hand. And when Calvin first broke the mile-an-hour record, that was Kentucky, 144. Yeah, we were down in Kentucky and had problems, but once we got to the point where we were making steady passes over 150, that car would change position so violently. Calvin was uncomfortable with it, and it was funny. One of the passes that I made, he looks at me, he's like, "You're really willing to get a lot closer to that wall than I ever will be." But that was part of learning how to drag race on Friday night tracks down at Cecil when track prep was it's not raining, let's go.
A curious thing here. You guys have done a lot of stuff, built a lot of stuff. If you were kings of the racing world for the day and you could create 3 things that you wish people would stop doing to their cars or their tunes or whatever, three things that would make the world a better place that you see people do you wish they wouldn't do. It could be their setup, their engine, anything. What would it be?
Does it have to do with drag? Does it have to be about drag racing, or can
No.
it be anything?
No.
Okay.
No,
Stance
do
cars.
whatever you want with the question.
Stance cars.
Go on.
Gone.
Verbal tunes. I'm not a fan. Where they
All right.
shoots fireballs and stuff. I'm sorry. I know I'm of the age of the age group that enjoys that type of thing, but sorry, I don't enjoy it. Number 3. All right, I'll let you come up with number 3.
It's not something I would get rid of, except for I don't want this to be a double negative, but I would put a whole lot more effort in trying to get the friendships, the club-like atmosphere back into any kind of racing sanction. It's amazing how much through the 70s, through the 80s, there was a lot of noses turned up in the air when some of the young guys were showing interest in racing and taking on the foreign cars as their vehicle of choice. And a lot of the conduct that took place back then drove a lot of young people towards that. And if I could be king for the day, it would be how do we get back to that culture that we had in the 70s and 80s, where it was the Ford guys and the Chevy guys were beating on each other, and Dodge and Plymouth guys were beating on each other, but there was a certain fondness of every kid in high school that you went to the drag strip with you. There was a really neat atmosphere, and as the foreign car interest increased, it put a lot more people out on the street, and you see a lot of these clubs, all they do is race out on the streets. And we can't go back in time, but how do we close that gap and get more people involved in the sport in a more healthy atmosphere? We're not going to end street racing, but we certainly can reduce it and get more people at the tracks and help these tracks stay open. We're seeing half a dozen tracks to a dozen tracks a year are closing because of the lack of participation. So uh, that's not the right answer to the question that you asked it in the words that you did. But if I could change anything, it would be creating a new culture that everybody that has an interest would know that they're welcome. And I think that would really help us all, because as we see SEMA and PRI out there trying to um, trying to help the track stay open, trying to help our sport stay alive. There's a lot of things that we as racers can do. There's, things that we need to do to be responsible, including recycling and being mindful of not being harsh on the environment, that will help people outside of our hobby, if you will, not have a negative impression of it. So,
I'd say rolling coal.
rolling coal. There you go.
There's my third.
There's our third.
Yeah.
Can't.
Yeah,
That's
here you go.
I like that. Best Customs has a question here. Has Nelson Sr. or any of you guys ever messed with the early Hemis?
I almost did. I was very close to getting a 392 Hemi out of a DeSoto. That was going to be a car or an engine I was going to pull out and put into an early street rod that I had. I was big into the 440s when I was a kid. When I was 16 years old, 17 years old, you could buy a 440 for $50. You could buy a 440 car for $100. And so it was real easy to buy those things up and, beat the life out of them. And if you kicked a connecting rod or something out of them, you just swept them up, threw them out, and bought another one. So I always wanted to get a Hemi. I've only owned late model Hemis. I've had 357 Hemis, but never had an early Hemi. The closest I got was the one that was in that DeSoto that didn't come to big.
Okay. Is there an engine that you have not yet owned that you'd like to? Is there something on your radar out? I know you talked about the Dodge, that inline six, but is there something else you say you've never owned and you want to? It's on your bucket list.
No, that's the only one. I've had the privilege, growing up in the time period that I did. It was easy to buy $50 cars, and I went through college driving $50 cars. I would buy them, fix them up, and when they finally were dead, I'd get, they'd roll past 250, 300,000 miles, and you just couldn't keep them together anymore. And so I'd buy the next one, and it put me in contact with a lot of neat cars. I've had 340s, 360s, 440s, 383s. I've had a whole host of Buicks, a pile of Oldsmobile stuff, and I raced everything that I ever drove. I've had big block Fords, small block Fords. When I was 16 years old, I had a 289 Hypo. And it wasn't until my later teen years that the Chevrolet engine just kept coming to the front as the best choice. I even dabbled in Cadillac engines. I did, the Oldsmobile stuff, the 39-degree engines, the 45-degree engines. It's amazing how available that stuff was. I had a 428 Pontiac. Most people didn't even realize they had 428 Pontiacs. I had some FE stuff, but I realized at some point, somewhere around 18, 19 years old, going to into my early 20s, that if I wanted to get serious about racing, the only stuff that was really affordable was the small block Chevys. And we we joke around with everybody. I love every kind of car. I appreciate foreign cars, domestic cars. I appreciate them all. But we always say we drive or we race Chevys because we want to be fast, but we tow with Fords because we want to get home. And to see the reaction on people's face when they hear that comment is always a lot of fun. But you know, we've had our share of every brand, and there's nothing out there other than that Dodge engine right now that's really got me looking at it. But that's not to say that the next new thing's not going to come along and have our undivided attention. It's going to be a small cubic engine that'll be very high RPM, and that will get my attention. And that's where my interest in is, because you can chase after the land speed records.
Yeah, I want an inline six that revs over 9,000 RPM. That's my dream engine.
What's it going to take to do that?
Really short stroke.
Okay. So I'll put that question to you, Calvin. Let's say you're getting to design your own inline six. All right. So you all of a sudden have the magic wand at the factory. You're going to design your own. You've got the budget you want. What do you make? What does it look like?
It'd probably be dual overhead cam, just because they work so well. 4 valves per cylinder. I'd like to have variable valve timing on both cams. I'd like a relatively tall deck height with something like a 3-inch stroke. Nice big bore would be cool. Maybe like a
what's a big bore? What's a big bore for you for that?
Something standard. You know, I'd go with a
4.1.
You know, 4.125. You know, pick something standard. You know, maybe try and. I mean, the problem is once you get to a bigger bore, your engine gets really long with an inline six. So you got to be a little careful there. But I want a tall deck height so you can get a really long rod in there. And yeah, spin it to 10,000 RPMs and listen to it sing.
One of the guys that was involved in the No Name 500, Ken's Garage.
Yes.
What was it?
Ken. Tall Garage.
Yeah, Tall Garage. That's it. Big fan of what he's doing. Wish we'd see more updates coming from him. But before we were working on the 4200s, we were talking about doing a LS-headed big Ford 6, and but we actually want to get a sorry.
My mom just called her mom by accident.
Say hi.
Yeah.
Say hi. How many hey Calvin, how many guys' dream engine do you think is a 258-inch inline six? Because that's exactly what you described.
Probably not many. There's probably a few weird ones like us.
No, okay, so that's interesting. What kind of cylinder head would you do with this thing?
I mean, it would have to be a 4 valve per cylinder. I mean, they just work so well.
Okay.
I mean, we did testing this engine. So we have the valve lift is 434 on the intake, 434. It's 386 on the exhaust. That's
the performance
valve lift. That's valve lift. That's not load lift. That's valve lift.
Okay.
200 degrees of duration on the intake, 208 degrees of duration on the exhaust at 50. We're making 100 more horsepower with these at the same boost as a 5.3 liter, and it has more camshaft in it. Yeah, we got a 218 cam in an LS, and we're making 100 more horsepower at 19 pounds of boost.
With 75 less inches.
Yeah, with 71 less cubic inches. So this 4.2 liter is beaten up on a 5.3 liter, and it's all about airflow. The head is just incredible on these things. And you should see the intake port on this thing. gigantic. And, you know,
And
it's,
you guys,
go ahead.
so you guys do your own engine work?
For the most part, for some stuff, we have a buddy that helps us out with stuff, but all the 4200 stuff we've done.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's really cool. This is just different kind of stuff that it's fun to ask.
Yep.
But it's what are your plans looking like, you know, for the next couple of years out? Because it seems to me like you're trying to dabble in everything and be good at most all of it.
So, as we were discussing the other day, we're probably going to start pushing towards land speed racing a bit more. Dad's been sitting on the sidelines with that for a few too many years. So the Datsun, we're actually talking about turning it into a land speed car, and the car sitting behind us, the Volvo, that will become the quick 4200 drag car. So we'll continue to pursue the 4200 stuff. We're starting to get a lot of aftermarket support for these engines. Artec Performance out of Australia just developed a turbo manifold for these things. And there's a lot more stuff on the way. So we're going to continue to play with these 4200s, but you're going to laugh at me, but I want to go in like the complete opposite direction. My first car had a 250 inline six, and I want to do a high performance 250 inline six. My dream car has always been a 57 Chevrolet, and I want to put a 250 inline six into it, and probably a supercharger or something like that. I want to hear the engine. You know, I love the way that an inline six sounds. There's this Nova, that is in Brazil. So if you don't know, the guys down in Brazil, they didn't get any V8s. They only got, you know, they got 2.2 liters and 1.5 liters, and their big block was the 250 inline six Chevrolet. It was the 4.1 liter. That was their big block. And because of that, they have worked every angle on these engines that you can possibly imagine. And with a stock block and a stock cylinder head, they're making over 2,000 horsepower with these things.
And stock crank.
Yeah, stock crankshaft. And, you know, I don't want to make anywhere close to that, but
I do.
the 250. But yeah, I just, you know, I want to go in the complete opposite direction. So you want to talk about cylinder head flow? They're Siamese ports, and they're not awful. You know, it's not a.
They're only good for 2,000 horsepower.
Well, it's not a 235 where the ports, you know, the valves are like up in the cylinder head, and you know they like designed it to have a shroud around the valve. It's like, how do you even make that work? You know, so they're not absolutely horrible, but yeah. So I want to go in the complete opposite direction. We got a land speed LS build we're working on.
That's going to be coming next. We're hoping the engine's done shortly after sick week, and to be able to start putting that car together. But we also got some LT projects in the works, although they may be temporarily put on hold if we end up chasing the land speed effort with the 4200. But the LS effort for the land speed, coincidentally, the engine that's getting put together is going to be 302 cubic inches of you know, LS goodness. So it's going to be a lot of fun to get that up and running and that project finished, because I started the project 8 years ago, and then when the boys went to school, everything got put on hold on everything we were doing everything we were doing land speed. I was about to say LSR, but it got put on hold, and I'm ready to say it's time to let the old man do something. So
starting to get into the Gen 5 small block Chevrolets, the LT series of engines. We're starting to get into that. I did see somebody comment, why would you do a 290? Why would you do a 250
Right.
rather than a 292? If I wanted to use an engine that had a 4.125 inch stroke, I'd go with one of these. These things have actually just over 4-inch stroke. I want something with less stroke so that I can spin it.
And 38 POS Racing asks, is the 4200's bore spacing conducive to adapting onto the 250? I'm assuming he means put that head on a 250 block. I think that's what he's asking there.
Yeah, they have 103 millimeter bore spacing, so it's just over 4 inches. And the old school 6-cylinders have a 4.400, same as a small block Chevrolet. Which there are guys that actually take a small block Chevrolet cylinder head, cut 2 cylinders off, one off each head, and then weld them together and make a inline 6 with a small block Chevrolet head. But I just want to go with the stock cylinder head. If it takes more boost to make the power I want, then we'll give it more boost.
After we get through the current lineup of projects, there's a small mountain of big block parts that we've got stashed away that's on the horizon. The 525 that I've been working on for a long time should be close to 1,800 horsepower when it's done. It's a big M block, the high quality crank, and I've got a set of Dart 360 heads that completely modified the combustion chamber and the runners so that there's a lot of LS influence in it. Literally, they are a work of art. We've taken a 115 cc combustion chamber, reconfigured it, and it's 90. I think it's 90 cc's, and the heads flow way up in the high 400s, all Jessel rocker arms and all that, and then we'll run probably 30 pounds of boost through that, and 30 pounds on 525 inches is going to be something that'll you'll probably hear it screaming from where you're at, because that ought to make a sound that won't be missed by a lot of people.
JB's little shop. If you've not seen, he has a supercharged V6. He's doing a 2.8 V6 Chevy with a supercharger on top.
Cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's cool and different. So the guys in the chat, if you haven't seen that, you want to check it out.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out.
Twisted Mopar Garage asked a question: how does aerodynamic play into the build? So I guess you can take this for whichever it's worth. You're talking about land speed. What do you guys do with aero?
Well, it depends upon the class that you're in. I like gas coupe, and you are not allowed to do any aerodynamic changes to the car. And one of the things that was a real eye-opener on the Studebaker, because we race on the East Coast, we have shorter runs than what they do at Bonneville. So at Bonneville, they don't even start timing you until 2 miles. On the East Coast, you're all done after 1.5 miles. So part of the equation on the East Coast is you have to be mindful of your weight. And I bring that up specifically because what happens is you have to use a lot of your horsepower to accelerate the mass. Out at Bonneville and on the West Coast, because you have much longer runs, what they do to make the cars more stable is throw a lot of weight at the car, because 1, you need the traction, and 2, it makes the car stable. And the significance of that on the East Coast is almost all cars have lift. Very few cars don't have lift. It's just varying degrees. And on the Studebaker, At 160 miles an hour, it has 540 pounds of tail lift, and at 180 miles an hour, it's 710 pounds of tail lift. And if you look at pictures of the car as it goes through the top end, you can literally see the back end of the car. It has pitch rotated forward. The tail is up in the air, and you can watch the tachometer bounce off the rev limiter at 8,100 RPMs as it's breaking traction from 160 miles an hour up. It's breaking traction. So to get back to the question that was asked, the focus on our next few builds are going to be cars that did have some aerodynamic features about them that keep them legal for the classes that we want to run in. The classes that do allow active or aero features that have downforce are typically much higher in mile an hour records, which we'll get to that point. But you had to also have the horsepower to push that along, and we didn't have the budget to chase those things. Of the 18 land speed records that we have had, almost, I think 14 of them were gas coupe and only 4 of them were gas altered. The gas altered records are much harder to get because they were allowed to have tail wings and a number of other features that allowed downforce. And we always ran the stock body classes, and you're driving, because when you break traction at 160 miles an hour, you're up on the wheel.
Datsun, it's probably the only one that we've really done aerodynamic mods on it. So shaving the drip rails on the side, that's a pretty good area for it to catch the wind. Lengthening the front end makes it more aerodynamically stable. The tail wing on the back adds downforce. But yeah, definitely something we think about a lot.
Wow. It's a whole different world. You guys do a lot of fabrication work there in your shop. We've been talking about fabrication this week, something else. We're going to see a lot of people building stuff, especially people trying to make it to no-name nationals. Do you have any fabrication tips that might help some of us be less like a blacksmith and more like a fabricator?
By good quality tools, and specifically, we have one tool for doing brake lines and tubing ends that, where did we get that?
I bought it's the Master Cool brake. Here, I'll get it down to choke.
Yeah, it ends some of the frustration that you have with that. Eastwood sells a small saw for cutting metal that is very high quality. You cut through metal much quicker.
This thing, lifesaver. It has all kinds of mandrels in here and different. You can do transmission hoses. There's all types of flares you can get for it. If you want to do like a factory late model style hose, where it's the push lock style, it has all kinds of stuff for that. When you're dealing with the old school tool, the one with all the holes in it that you got to clamp around the fitting, and with the the old school one,
they're great the first 3 times you use them. After that, they're bent metal.
Yeah, I mean,
because the tubing just slide in the fixture. Is that the thing?
Yep.
I've had that too.
Yeah. But the long answer short for the question asked is get good quality tools. It is what saves the most amount of time and puts the most amount of enjoyment back into what you're doing. Efficiency of time is so critical, and so that's the long answer short is the better your tools, the more you're willing to do stuff and try stuff, and there's no better nothing is better than experience. And if you're able to invest your time more quickly, wisely, and have more of it being productive, your gains come as a catalyst to everything we just mentioned.
Let's see. My
That's
advice would be slow down. Take your time. That would be my advice.
that's a great point about tools, because you don't realize how much more that puts back into your life and reduces your frustration until you've tried to clamp on a piece of tubing for the 10th time and you can't get the flare right because it's walking in that die. It just,
Yep.
that kind of stuff, you're right. It makes a big difference.
We you see us pointing and looking up. We have just a row of boxes of the tools that I truly appreciate Paula's investment in what we've done. She's always been a strong proponent of, if you need the tool, buy the tool. And over the years, we've accumulated a lot of things that allow us to move very quickly through projects. We are set up with a complete weld shop here and over in the building next to us. This shop is actually our business. We do a lot of work here, and it's completely set up. We rebuilt a 103-year-old barn, and gutted it from the very foundation all the way up. And when we were digging it out, we found over in the one corner, it used to be an old blacksmith shop. And it was interesting, shortly after we had moved in, the woman who grew up here as a child stopped in and asked if she could look in the barns, and I was giving her a tour. And right behind me at the time that she had come to visit, I had a 27 Ford T Roadster sitting there, and she walked through the door, and you could tell it just took her breath away. She got all teary-eyed and said, "That's the exact same spot my father used to park his Model T in." And but next door we have the mill and the lathe, and another TIG welder, another MIG welder, and so we're set up that we can work very efficiently on multiple projects, and each one serves a different purpose. Obviously, here we have the lift, and having a heated floor makes a big difference. We get a lot done because the climate is rather pleasant. I spent most of my life working outdoors, working on gravel or working in unheated buildings, and as time went on, my body just couldn't handle it anymore. So we built a shop next door, and then 2 years ago is when we remodeled this and started doing work out of here.
It's a very nice shop. It looks like it's well thought out. So back at you there, Calvin. Best Custom says slow down, but it goes the other way. If you overthink things, you can have paralysis by analysis. So how do you know when you're investing enough thought? How do you know when you're overthinking it?
Dad says, "Get to work."
Yeah. Yeah, that's a hard one to answer. I mean, at some point you gotta do it. You gotta just, okay, I've analyzed this from every angle I can. It's time to do something. I mean, I meant slow down, like while you're doing it. Don't try and
Right.
set a land speed record while you're trying to fabricate something. Just when you're about to do your cut, just make sure you got it lined up right. Don't if you got obligations and you're trying to get it done fast enough, maybe it's time to just stop.
Yeah, take time to zero the deck on your mill.
Yeah.
That way when you make the cut, you're only making one cut.
Yep.
Very smart.
Measure twice at once.
Yeah. Exactly.
Anybody have any questions? Anything specifically? Mohawk says it's a full house. We have a fair number of people in here. We usually do on Fridays. Glad all of you guys could make it. I'm always I always like getting to talk with the Nelsons. It's always fun. They were up for our live in Carlisle here in July, where I was accused of trying to burn up a hotel conference room with a Roadrunner horn, but and things of that sort.
Yeah.
Yeah, Danny Boyd says that blacksmiths fix trucks in Pakistan. I don't know if you guys have seen it, and I'll send you the video, but there's a third world machine shop of some kind on YouTube where a guy chucks a 4-valve, 6-cylinder inline 6 head in a lathe, a giant lathe, and spins the whole head around, and that's how he trues the head.
Like this?
It spins. It spins this whole
Oh wow!
4-foot long head in a circle, and the lathe goes out and cuts the head that way.
Wow.
I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah. Huh.
But it's real. So there's multiple ways of getting things done. We're very fortunate to live in a part of the world and have the kind of technology we do.
Yep.
Truly.
I don't know that I would take it to that machinist, but if you were where you had to do that, I guess that's a way to get running again, right?
Yep. See, I saw that that Fiero guy asked if we've ever considered a Fiero build. There was a time where we were thinking about doing one for the Grassroots Motorsports Challenge, but that didn't work out.
We got a look up front, close look at the car, and we were glad we didn't get it.
I wouldn't say it's out of the question, but we got enough other stuff on our plate. It'll probably be quite a while before we're ready to mess with one of them. Honestly, I wouldn't even know what I would want to do with it. There's sort of a niche type of thing. For drag racing, you almost got too much weight on the rear. You're gonna have to worry about wheeling the thing if you're not careful. But yeah, it's definitely something I've put thought into, but never pulled the trigger.
Punisher asked about the oiling issue on the Pontiac stuff. There's been a lot done about how to do oil control on those things, and one of the first things that you got to look at is the restricting the oil. They pump too much oil to the top end of the engine, and when you start to turn the RPMs on them, you've basically got a dry pan, and that's why they have so much bearing damage. And I don't know if he had directed that question towards us, but I did do some Pontiac racing back in the early years. And the first thing that you got to do is restrict the oil to the top end of the engine.
I'm not sure why, but my comments have gotten a little paralysis all of a sudden. You guys are still getting them, obviously.
Jay Russell,
you can answer, make up whatever you like.
Yep. J. Russell Finch asks, "What's your preference on Summit, Jags, or someone else?" I like Summit, but I should say I used to prefer Summit over everybody else, and then I ordered something from Jags, and it showed up in less than 24 hours. So I've been giving Jags a little bit more of a chance recently. Yeah, I ordered something, and I think 18 hours later it was at my door. I couldn't believe it.
Somebody asked if Mama Nelson races. Yes, she does. Her first time out in competition, she made it all the way to the final round over at Maple Grove at the Race for Ronald's House, where we're involved in a charity event, and it's the Race for Ronald's House. Last year, the whole group raised $59,000. It's an organization that basically helps families that have children that are going through crisis stay together by helping to support some of the bills that they're dealing with, and they're able to stay local to wherever where the children are receiving medical attention. And so we promote that. That's coming up June 17th of this year. We'll be at that event again with 3 cars, Maple Grove. And you'll hear us plugging that event quite often leading up to that date. But she ran her truck. If you look at our YouTube channel, it's the red pickup truck. It's a 66 F100 with an LS3 in it. And she's hurt more than one person's feelings with that thing. It runs 1240s at 108 miles an hour, and it's a lot of fun to watch her race. It's she's got her own helmet and her own jacket and her own hot rod, and it's a lot of fun to watch her mow down the competition.
That truck reminds me of John Cope's truck, Mr. Haney.
Yeah.
He has a red 66 F100.
Yep, we were checking that out when we were at the No Name.
Slant Daily Garage here asks, please how you pair the turbo and the engine and cam and heads together. How do you determine your combination for such?
So I think it probably starts with what's available as far as the turbos. You got to look at what's available, and you got to come up with a budget, how much you're willing to spend on that particular turbo. With the 4200s, we've tried a lot of different turbos on them. I would say, if you're going for a particular power goal, a lot of manufacturers will have the power rating for the turbo. If it's, like an LS, I would say maybe take that horsepower rating and get the next size up, because they're not as efficient of an engine. So if you want to meet your power goals, you're going to have to, oversize it a tad. For the 4200s, they're pretty efficient, so you should get out exactly what they say you can get out of them. If you're wanting to stage the car, with ease, and get up onto the trans brake, get up onto the 2-step quickly, maybe try to get something a little smaller, or you may even want to look at a twin turbo, 2 turbos, because the weight of twin turbo to spin them up, the weights of the impellers and, all the stuff that has to spin, you have to, increase the RPM of. It's significantly lighter on a twin turbo setup than on a big single turbo. So you can get, the Datsun is a good example. It has almost the exact same setup as what my Fairmont station wagon has in it. And that thing gets onto the trans brake like boom, like as soon as you hit the pedal, it's on the 2-step. Whereas my station wagon with a single turbo, the Datsun's a twin turbo setup. Whereas my station wagon is a single turbo setup. It gets there. It gets there pretty quickly, but it's not as fast as the Datsun.
One of the big things that you have to consider in sizing that turbo is high-end turbos are expensive for a reason. They are a better quality. And if you look at the video that we had put out recently about the precision turbo, you can tell that they are on the forefront of technology, and that you are not just buying something expensive, you're buying something that's higher quality, and higher quality turbos allow you to compete more with people who are at the top end of that whatever class you're racing in, and that becomes part of the equation on how do you pick parts. Because if your goal is to be competitive, there are certain things that you can't compromise on, and the higher end turbos, you can use a smaller turbo because it works more efficiently and it'll stage quicker. So your first question is, what's your end goal? And if you can't define what your goal is, it's very easy to go down the path of picking the wrong parts very quickly. Parts that are easiest on the wallet may be some of the worst things that you can actually put in a package. So
yeah, I mean, a lot of the Chinese stuff is based off of the latest and greatest of tractor trailer turbos from the 90s. So it's they took a copy of a 96 millimeter turbine from Borg Warner, and they've been using that for over 20 years. It's just, you get what you pay for.
Best case, is this what you guys do for a living?
No.
No.
We're both engineers. Calvin is a controls engineer. I'm working as a consultant, basically as a construction manager, which is my current vocation. But the shop here is an active shop. We have reduced the amount of work that comes through here at this time. And I'm going to continue. But part of what changed our reality, the business was doing well, but unfortunately, a lot of things happened in the political arena that caused supply chain issues. And, the one year we had 44 customers, 15 of them we had material delivery issues, 5 of those projects we didn't get done. Moved into the next year, and 100% of every single project was impacted by a material delay. And, you can look behind us. It's a one-car shop, and if every single project has a material delay on it, you don't have income. So when I had the opportunity to go back to where I had been working, it certainly took that out of the equation. We keep the business open for a number of reasons. We have some folks coming in, but it's a supplemental, not a primary anymore.
Dad ordered a set of collectors that Dad ordered for the one project. It took 4 months to get here.
Oh my gosh, I ordered parts 2 Septembers ago that I'm still waiting for. There's parts that I ordered last March that have not been delivered yet. It's crazy what's going on out there, and small shops are getting destroyed by what's going on, and unfortunately, it's gonna be at least 2 more years of this chaos before we start to see things go back to normal, I think.
I've watched. I've had to do 2 roofs, reframe an addition on a house, plumbing, wiring, and I see those invoices, and it's unbelievable how much more materials cost in addition to being able to get them. Just unreal.
It's absolutely insane. What used to be $6 a foot for chromoly tubing is now $19 a foot, and the quality is horrible. You have to pick through everything to get what you're looking for. You almost can't get something out of a box that doesn't have an issue anymore.
I had to replace a variable valve timing solenoid on the CRV yesterday. And right out of the box, there's all this grit that was stuck in the oil screen where it bolts to the head. And I thought, wow, if all that grit is in there, imagine what's in the solenoid I can't see.
Yep.
And so, how much faith do I have that thing is going to work, and how much trash is it going to put in the bearings?
Yep.
These are just things we should not devolve in terms of our materials and parts, and yet we have. Here we find it that way.
Yep. Yeah.
It's got to be miserable running a shop under those conditions.
Yep.
It is, and we need to really emphasize buying American. I don't want to offend anybody, but we have a number of customers who are committed to buying American-made products, and it certainly is going to help us all in the long run if more of us will join in that crusade.
You said about the solenoid that was dunked up out of the box. There's a saying that we like to repeat. What does new stand for? Never ever worked.
Yeah, that's true. It's not proven.
Yep.
It's not proven. So with that, you guys, What kind of things do you have that you found that people might not know about that are American made? Like things, oh, I thought they were making all of those, overseas now. And turns out there's a place in wherever, Iowa, that makes it. You find any new discoveries like that lately?
Well, one of the things that I'm pleased to see is there's a lot more big block Chevy stuff out there that's American made, and there's a lot more companies that are coming to the forefront on performance parts. And I said big block Chevrolet, that's what I've been exposed to. What I'm encouraged by is that those names that I've seen uh, are companies that produce all the manufacturers, all the name brands. So that tells me that stuff is going to be out there. But some of our customers are very, very selective on that, and been very fortunate to have had an opportunity to see what they're buying and know that there's a made in the USA somewhere cast into that part. And that's exciting to see. So, from intakes to heads to, excuse me, to other parts, I can't think of them specifically other than there's a lot more out there than what I thought there had been. I thought more stuff had gone overseas, and in fact, there's a lot more out there that's US.
I'm beginning to find things that are coming back to America that I might not have thought would have at one time, and I think it's pretty cool. In fact, I found a master cylinder, Mopar master cylinders. There's a guy he has a foundry that casts them for him. He finishes them here, so everything is American made in that piece. Thought that was neat. I didn't know there was one you could buy like that brand new, but sure enough. Best Customs is asking an interesting question. I'd like this one too. How do you manage your time, like hours of sleep and such? And that's a great question. The reason being, I talk to Andrew fairly regularly, and man, he is one structured, organized machine of a guy. He's got systems, and so I'm curious about that. I think that's a great question. Just your time management. How does that work for you?
Well, it's interesting you asked that question. I have been asked about that very thing 3 times this past week, and
I can see that.
my manager actually told one of the new engineers, "Do not try and keep up with that man."
I can see
he
that.
he, he recognized that I've been able to manage more different projects faster and been involved with more things than any of the other folks on staff. And one of the keys is keep lists. And one of the things that we live by is if you got 10 minutes, do a 10-minute job. And if you recognize that, when you look at your day, you can't look at your day as a day. You need to look at your day as 3 days. You have the early part of the day, you have the middle part of the day, you have the latter part of the day. And if you set goals for each of them and recognize that within them you have small chunks of time that you can utilize to either make the next part of your day better or something that you're planning on doing later in the week get closer to being completed. It's you can't lose that because the most precious thing that we own, other than our relationship with the good Lord, is the time that He's given us here to do the work that needs to be done. And if we use our time recognizing its high value, you will be more committed to doing 10 minutes of work when you have 10 minutes. And you add up enough 10-minute chunks of time, you've created an entire weekend day. And I can't understate that. The other thing is we have always practiced this. When we're building a project, we identify what do we want to do the least. And we do those parts of the project first. And it's amazing how so many people will push off what they don't want to do until later on. And as you work through the project, you run out of energy, and all you got to do is the stuff you don't want to do. And it's amazing how many people don't get things done. And if you focus your energy on what do you want to do the least, what don't you want to do, get them out of the way. As time goes on and you run out of energy, you're working on the stuff that's fun, and you can have twice the pace because you're actually working on what you want to work on, even though you're running out of gas. And there's a lot of small things like that. Keep lists. Recognize every minute has value. If you got 5 minutes, do 5 minutes worth of work. If you got 10 minutes, do 10 minutes worth of work. If you got 2 hours, do a 2-hour job. But don't try and mix those up. Recognize that those small chunks and those small victories, they add up. And by having good lists, you can identify what they are, and you can hone in on them very quickly. And get the crap that you don't want to do done first. That way your energy goes up instead of down.
Yeah,
That's excellent
you-
advice.
you get better at it as you do more. I would say try and identify the, if there's a part you need to order, you can't do any more work unless you have this part. Try to plan ahead. Try to, be able to get that in so that you can do the work when you have time. That's something we're dealing with a lot on the Volvo here. Just trying to identify every little thing that we're going to need so that we're not, down to the end and, crap, I forgot to order that fitting. It's just, you get better at it. The more cars you build, the more you're like, oh, I'll need this, that, the other thing. And okay, we're good.
That's really wise. That is really cool. That alone is worth tuning into this live, in my opinion. I think it's
Yeah. Well,
really
nothing's
smart.
worse than, you finally have time to do something and then, crap, I didn't order this thing. And, it sucks all the wind out of your sails.
That's again, that's where the lists come into play. If you look far enough in advance on your list, you'll realize that material procurement is part of that process. You get out in front of that every time you get a chance to look at your list, and keep your list up to date. We separate our lists into what has to be done under the car, so that when the car is off the ground, we've got extra things to do while we're under there before you bring the car back down. And we try not to run over each other, because we're working on the same car, but I'm working on plumbing and he's working on wiring, and I'm working on brackets and he's working on some other component. And then, when we have to work together on things, we work together on things, but we're able to be wholly and acutely focused on areas. And as we, as I stated before, if you're working on what you don't want to work on first, and you're getting those things knocked out of the way, it's amazing how much faster you close in on the end of it. And we've been able to, with full-time jobs, we get 4 and 5 projects, major projects done a year.
The car sitting behind us, it was sitting in a junkyard. October 11th, 2022 is when we bought this car, and it was sitting in a junkyard in line to get crushed. And it now has a 650 cert roll cage in it, chromoly roll cage, a 4-link rear suspension, a Vortec 4200 engine swapped into it, turbo 400, and it's been certified. All the front suspension was converted to a strut front suspension, and we still have 21 days to get it the rest of the way done. But I think we're on pace to get it done. So just to give you an idea of what you can accomplish if you put your mind to it.
That Fescue Customs asked about the notepad or the phone, and it's scrolled off the screen at this point. But we both have different ways of doing it. I prefer the whiteboard behind us. I like keeping it there and then updating it daily. I know Calvin uses his phone and
Yeah.
puts lists on there frequently.
Docs.
So whatever works for you, there's no, we each have our own comfort, and I prefer the whiteboard.
And then another thing that helps is you get your wife involved and you ask her to help you clean up pools and clean up the floor and
It's a huge collaboration. She's a big part of it.
Bringing Cat for moral support.
yeah.
I can't believe how much I use the notepad feature on the phone.
Yep.
It's fantastic. I have 90 different lists. Actually, I think that was last count. I have 90. Let's see. No, it's up to 106. I have 106 different lists on my phone for different things. Like every car has a maintenance log. I keep it in the phone. I
Yep.
keep the No Name Nationals entry lists and all the details for that, my checklists in the phone. But that's where I keep my lists. And man, I never would have thought that before phones had such a feature. I would use it so much.
Yep.
You're
Yep.
seeing the corner of my whiteboard over here. I've got all kinds of things. So that's where I can draw out blueprints and stuff. But it is interesting to see how you guys organize, because you obviously are highly efficient and highly effective people, and it's curious. So I
Yeah.
thought that was a good question.
I use Google Docs in the same way that you use your notepad. Google Docs you can access anywhere from your phone, your computer, whatever. So I have tons and tons and tons of spreadsheets on there. To-do list for the Fairmont, to-do list for the Studebaker, to-do list for the. I haven't made one for the Volvo yet. We normally don't, really make an in-depth list until we're closer to the end. But with this car, we've been scrambling enough that we really haven't had time to make a list, honestly. But
Well, here's what I'm curious about. Is there anything, because people normally associate high tech with the younger people, right? And I'm right in between Andrew and Calvin in age. So is there anything that maybe Calvin does by choice that's really low tech? And maybe is there a counterpart or something Andrew does that's really high tech that might surprise people? Just
I like books. That's pretty low tech. Like if there's a book on an engine, I like to buy the book. I don't like to look at it on my computer. There's definitely some lower tech stuff that I do that the only thing I can think of is TikTok. Honestly, I can't like TikTok. I just don't. It doesn't make sense to me. You can't. 1 minute is not enough time to get into anything in depth. It's I don't know. I just hate it. But that just popped in my head for some silly reason. But
that's interesting.
But and high tech thing that Dad does.
Yeah,
Is there something Andrew does that just blows young people away that you're like, oh yeah, this is how I roll?
No, nothing really that high tech, but I probably I'm more of a big supporter of new technology, and a lot of folks in my generation are not, they're still carburetor or die, and I'm very much the opposite. I'm show me the latest technology. I want to know what's out there. Is there a better way to do it? And I love my carburetors. Good gravy. There's probably 3 of them within 15 feet of me right now. But I have always supported Calvin's desire to do the high tech stuff. My familiarity with engines and part of my old job that I had, I was the manager of compression for the Northeast region. I oversaw 1.2 million horsepower of compression that was used to move 20% of gas in the United States. And in that capacity, I got to see a lot of developing technologies and where we're going with emissions control packages and those kind of things. And it always was something I enjoyed tremendously. And And as Calvin showed his interest in it, I always told him, don't get bogged down in the carburetors and this old stuff that I like. It's just very easy for me to do it because I've always done it. Focus your attention on where we're going, because if you do that, you're going to put food on the table. And he has taken the channel to the point where we're actually getting recognized in the industry. Super excited to share with people that we've got this company out of Australia that's sending parts to us. The folks at Holly know our name. We've got a drive shaft company that just recently started to help out. We've got Precision Turbo recently sent a turbo, an injector company, and as the channel continues to grow and it's starting to bring some income, it's been more beneficial in the fact that we are starting to get the attention of a lot of manufacturers. And I truly am hopeful that we were hoping Dodge was going to be a PRI, because we were prepared to go and knock on the door and say, hey, we're interested in this Hurricane. And at some point, the right person is going to hear us say that, and we will deal with that at the time. But I guess that's the long answer short of I just embrace new technology. I'm not able to do it myself, but I got Junior here is able to hold the old man's hand, and we're a formidable duo in what we've been able to accomplish.
I thought of something else old school that everybody that is into cars, that's my age group, they want to draw everything up in CAD and 3D scan the car and do all this crazy stuff on the computer. I appreciate what they're doing. Like my one buddy that I work with, he's trying to do his whole truck in CAD, and I appreciate what he's doing. That's not me. Like I want to okay, make a little cardboard template, and, cut it out of a piece of metals, chuck something up in the manual mill and mill something out. I feel like the CAD is just something that'll slow me down. And, I use CAD to make parts on occasion. But, for the most part, I avoid CAD as much as possible. Like I will do a whole lot more yeah, that'll work, than, I don't do a finite element analysis. It's just, yeah, that'll work. Yeah, it's a lot more, caveman engineering than.
Yeah, and
my CAD is cardboard aided design.
Exactly. Yeah. I was going to get one of our templates and say, this is my CAD.
Yeah. I guess what would surprise people is how much time I spend making a tool to make something. And we've had recently a guy came in, needed a repair, and we spent 3 hours making a tool and made a 5-minute repair out of it. And had he taken it to Ford, it would have cost him probably $3,000 to $4,000. And I was able to fix the thing in 5 minutes after spending 3 hours to make a tool to do the repair. And that is something that a lot of people get surprised by, of just how much energy we put into making a fixture or a jig or a tool so that we can do what we want to do effectively. And whether that would surprise somebody or not, everybody that sees us do it is always surprised.
So I asked a question of Professor P when we had him on Wednesday. I was a guest host substituting for Dallas because he was driving up north for some AHRA business this past Wednesday. So I was filling in for him. So I had the opportunity to go off the rails or whatever when I had Professor P on the show and asked him, so what is something that's completely non-automotive, non-machine, just something completely out there that you do that nobody would think, oh wow, I had no idea that guy did that. And for Shane, it was drummer. He's a drummer.
That surprised me. I listened to that entire presentation and I really enjoyed it because I would have never guessed that that's something he would have done. And I was, I kind of chuckled when I heard that he did that. For myself, there's almost nothing out there. Many years ago, when I used to hunt, I used to play guitar, I used to do a lot of things. I realized a long time ago, if we were going to get serious about racing, everything had to be taken off the list. So for myself, the long story short is I don't do anything other than, spend time with my family and work on cars.
I'd say it's pretty much
Nothing
the
wrong
same
with
for me. Oh, yep. Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. I don't really have much else that I do for fun. I grew up with it. It's I've been doing this since I was born, pretty much.
I got a picture of Junior helping me work on. I had a big block Impala, and he was very small at the time. He could walk. He could, not quite talk, but he's sitting on the valve cover of my big block Chevy next to the master cylinder, and I had him replacing the master cylinder. He had to be two years old or so, and he's just a little grease ball having this grand old time, turning the wrenches, doing something, and you could see the joy of having that sense of accomplishment because we took something off, we put something on, and it was such a grand time. And I've got another picture of him. He's 4 years old. He's got the torque wrench in hand, him and his brother, and they're torquing a set of cylinder heads on a small block Chevy, and the two of them aren't tall enough to see the top of the engine. So it's really funny to see some of the things, but he's been poisoned since a very early age to think that this is normal.
No, I think it's great. How about you, boss?
That's you.
Go ahead.
I just have to answer some of these questions they asked.
You saw it.
Significant other? No, he does not have a significant other, and he's
Single.
he's single.
Looking on my finger.
No.
I knew you saw it. I knew it. Yep.
So somebody tried to contact you.
No. Okay.
I don't know.
I didn't have anything to do with that, Calvin.
Yeah,
I don't have anything. No, this is a blast. I'm enjoying getting to hang out with everybody. I do hate that comments got messed up, so I'm flipping over to YouTube periodically just to check, and I see that. But I can't keep up with them real time. That's okay. This is still fun. You guys can still see the comments. Yeah, my last comment croaked out at 9:07, but I've been flipping back and forth. Still good and fun though. Any of you guys have any questions? Because we got a few more minutes here, and then we're going to wrap it up for the evening. But I think it's been fun. The time always flies with you guys. I get to learn a lot. I've been kind of picking Andrew's brain a little bit about roll cages and stuff this week, asking questions about that. I'm actually looking into getting my tech inspector certification because I just think it'd be a valuable thing to have. There are things I like to learn about. Just doesn't mean just because I like to learn about something doesn't mean I have any intention of making a career in it or doing it or anything. And I certainly don't want to do tech at the No Name Nationals because I consider that a conflict of interest. That's Deke's thing, right? But I would like to take it just to learn it. Take the SFI course and the tests and stuff because I'm one of those kind of people. I just like to learn all the time. Learning is an opportunity that we're very fortunate to have. And I can't take the thought of the day getting away from me that I don't get to learn something new. And that is, truthfully, one reason I like to surround myself with all these smart, talented people in our YouTube community, because there's just so much knowledge and wisdom and experience right here in this community. It's wonderful. So that's what I like to do.
You got two questions or two comments there. That the one is, does nitrous auto go on the right or the left? You would be surprised how many times we weigh our cars when we're building the cars, and how focused we are on trying to get the balance left to right to be 50-50. Obviously, that's very difficult to do with the driver being on the left side of the car. So most often your nitrous bottle will end up on the right hand side. But as we build the car, we will weigh the car, 3-4 times. We'll offset the engine. There's a lot of things that we will make very deliberate choices on where we place things in an effort to get the balance on the car that we ultimately want. This car currently is 51% rear weight bias.
Wow.
We're not quite at the 50-50 on the left to right balance, but that is, if people take a little bit of time and look at what we do, they will see that there are very consistent choices made on where we position some of the parts for the purpose of trying to get the best final numbers on our wheel weights. One of the things that we do is spend a tremendous amount of time scaling a car and getting it right for the first pass down the track. There's many times that we will build a car, tow it 1,000 miles, and the first time we make a pass in the car, we're in the nines because one, we're confident, and two, we've spent that much time getting it set up. Before it rolls out the door, we've got the alignment right, we've got the wheel weights right, the corner weights are set up so that that car is going to go exactly where you point it.
My Fairmont station wagon has, for quite a while, it had never been slower than a 9-second pass. Unfortunately, it recently went a 10-second pass, but just to give you an idea, it's, we set the cars, Dad sets the cars up well enough that it's never been slower than a 9.
It had never not run a 9-second run until recently he made a 10-second pass.
I thought it was interesting. I was talking, or I guess texting Andrew about goals and success and failure on goals. And it's refreshing how hardcore he is on goals and success and failure. I mean, it is a really black and white thing when it comes to, did I make my goal or not? So I remember when he was trying to get 20,000 subscribers, he was like a few days out. And he says, "Hey, I got this many." He's excited. He's like, right at 20. My goal was 20, was for the end of the year, wasn't it? 20,000 for the end. So I put up a community post, and he still needed so many, and you got them right before. I think you got them with hours to spare, right?
Yep, I appreciate what you did for us there.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, though, is if I know that in 1999, he says, no, that goal didn't happen. There's no fudging it. There's no exaggeration.
Not a 9.0000 is not an 8.
Right.
Now, I appreciate you saying that. I know it's easy for people to misinterpret intent and comments and things like that. And, our goals that we set are very real. We can easily be misunderstood when we say something was not successful, because our interpretation of successful is, did we meet the goal that we had set, not some watered down version of it. And
right.
In the not so distant past, that actually had come up, and there was a little bit of criticism offered for comments that we made. and it wasn't a reflection on others involved or events or anything of that sort. It was, our goal was to do something very specific, and we didn't accomplish that. And when people who don't know us hear us say that we failed, they don't realize how intensely focused we are on our goals. And if they aren't aware of our goals and we make a statement, it can be misconstrued as something very negative. And that's something we've got to be a little bit more focused on, because not everybody knows how intensely focused we are on trying to realize goals. When we go up to Loring, Maine this coming year, if we don't run 200, if we run 199 miles an hour, we fail. And there's a lot of people that'll never run 199 miles an hour.
You know, this reminds me so much. I used to be really into weightlifting, and I loved it. And I like it too much because I can't find a happy balance with it, right? I mean, I'm either bending a bar around my neck or I'm not doing anything. And the thing is you work sets to failure, right? And you accept very cut and dry. But the thing is all of those immediate goals and all that working to failure is what makes the overall picture of success much higher. And you start to set more ambitious goals, and you make those macro goals when you're not afraid to fail at all the little micro goals on the way there. Yeah. At least that's what I think. But I think you guys have a stellar reputation for doing this. So that's why I thought it was interesting to talk about that tonight a little bit.
Well, I appreciate that, and I hope everybody that watches the channel is really enjoying some of the things that we're doing. You know, as we take, you know, our adventures into a lot of different directions. I hope folks enjoy the ride with us, because you know, the goal is the goal, and the goal is not going to change. But it is an adventure and a journey to get to those points, and being able to chronicle them on the channel is part of what fills the content. And you know, we win and lose some of the subscribers along that path because they don't want to necessarily see the bricklaying to make the foundation. But the ultimate goal is that once you have the foundation, you can chase what really matters to you, and you can't get there in one step. But you know, it's been a lot of fun to be part of this community, because you know, we get onto some of these lives, and normally I watch on a Friday and I announce my name and I see, you know, half a dozen hello Andrews, and that's really a neat part of this community. And John, you and Dallas have done a tremendous job, and I see these names here and I recognize so many of them, and I'm looking forward to September when I get to see everybody again. And we may not be chasing a record this coming year, but that community is something that's very special. And you know, I'll leave it at that.
Well, you know, talking about YouTube in general, you've doubled your subscribers in the last year.
Yes.
Yeah, it took
you were
us
right around 10,000 in January.
Yep. Yeah, it took us an entire year to get to 1,000 subscribers, the first 1,000, and now we picked up 10,000 last year. It's crazy.
So that's a clear proof that there are enough people enjoying your stuff that they want to follow the ride. Yep. So I think that's great. Well, I'll tell you what, I even though I lost my feed of comments, I've been flicking over and watching periodically. I appreciate all of you guys, and thanks for coming out tonight and spending your Friday in here. Definitely got to thank all the mods. You guys have kept it running smoothly. You always do. Sometimes you're just stealthily watching in the background. Sometimes you're hanging out, but you always keep it running right. Got to thank the Nelsons. Really appreciate your time. You guys took a 2-hour block of your day today, which could do a 2-hour job. So thank you much for coming here and sharing with us. We appreciate that. And you guys have anything that you'd like to plug before we call it an evening?
Well, we're coming up on sick week, so we're chronicling that on our channel. If you look down there, right below our screen here, Nivlac57 is our YouTube channel,
Right.
and we're going to be there in like 3 weeks. So if anybody's in the Florida area, come out and say hi. And
Buy a T-shirt.
yeah, buy a T-shirt. We plug that as well. The plan is to take this 1959 Volvo PV544 that we pulled out of the junkyard just
100 days ago.
100 days ago. We're going to take this and my Fairmont station wagon. So it's we got a lot of work to do, but hopefully we're going to get there. And so yeah, if I have one thing to plug, that would be it.
Well, their channel is linked below. If you are not subscribed or you've not checked these guys out, go over and check it out. The link to their channel is below the video. And with that, you all have a good evening, and we'll see you next week.
See you later, guys.
Good night, guys.
Good night.